Why was she sitting so far from the others? The briefing tent was crowded, humid, buzzing with low chatter, yet no one glanced at her. No one except the new lieutenant who seemed to notice everything. She adjusted the strap of her rifle case, eyes on the floor. She could feel the others' unspoken thoughts like static in the air. The invisible space around her was no accident. "Today we're moving on Ridge 12, the captain said, tapping the map projected on the canvas wall. Intel says enemy activity has increased. Spotters may be scouts. We find them before they find us." The room leaned forward. She stayed still. No one asked for her input. No one even asked her name. She was fine with that. Or at least she told herself she was. Outside, the light was harsh mid-morning sun bouncing off the dust like a mirror. She stepped away from the tent, away from the noise. Her boots crunched over gravel. No one followed. That was how they liked it, how she liked it too some days. Her call sign was Hawk, but no one had used it in weeks. To them, she was just the quiet one, the ghost in the corner who didn't laugh at their jokes, didn't drink coffee in the mess, didn't trade stories. They didn't know she'd once been loud, once been someone who laughed the hardest, drank the strongest, volunteered for every mission first. They didn't know what had happened on her last deployment. And she wasn't about to tell them. She found her usual spot, a folding chair outside the perimeter, facing the ridge line they'd be moving toward later. It was jagged, sharp against the pale sky. The kind of terrain where sound traveled strangely, where a single shot could feel like thunder. She closed her eyes, listened. Wind, a loose flap of canvas somewhere behind her, a distant bird. And then faintly, the sound of boots on gravel. She opened her eyes. The lieutenant stood there, young, with two clean fatigues and a notebook under his arm. He hesitated like a man who knew he wasn't welcome but couldn't help himself. "You don't sit with them?" he asked. She gave him a look. He waited for more. "I hear enough inside the tent," she said finally. He nodded as if that made perfect sense, though she knew it didn't. "You were recommended for this unit," he said, glancing at his notes. "By name, that doesn't happen often." She turned back toward the ridge. "You have a point, Lieutenant." "I just wondered," he said softly, "what makes you different?" Her jaw tightened. Different. The last time someone had said that word to her, it was over the body of a teammate. Different meant you don't belong here. She didn't answer. The lieutenant seemed to understand that was all he was getting. He left. Hours later, the convoy rumbled toward the ridge. Dust rose in sheets, coating their gear, sticking in their teeth. She rode in the last vehicle, rifle case across her knees, helmet low over her eyes. She didn't speak. Didn't join in when the others swapped guesses about what they'd find. Didn't tell them that she already had a bad feeling. They stopped at the base of the ridge. The air was still now, as if holding its breath. She dismounted, slinging her rifle over her shoulder, letting the weight settle into her bones. The team spread out, boots scuffed rock, metal clinked softly. She moved slower, more deliberate, listening again. Wind, boots. And there, a sound just slightly out of place. A pebble shifting higher up. Her breath stilled. She dropped to one knee, glassed the ridge through her scope. At first nothing, just rock and shadow. Then a shape resolved, barely visible, perfectly still, a spotter, almost hidden against the rock. Her heart kicked once hard. No one else had seen him yet. If he moved, they'd be compromised. She steadied her rifle, exhaling. Her scope centered on his chest. She waited. And waited. She wasn't supposed to shoot without a call, wasn't supposed to act alone. But she knew what happened when a spotter got away. She knew exactly how many letters had to be written the last time that happened. Her finger brushed the trigger. Not yet. Her breath was slow, the world narrowing to a single point of focus. And then he shifted just slightly to bring a radio to his mouth. She fired. The crack echoed across the ridge like a whip crack. Birds scattered, dust jumped from the rock. The man fell. Silence followed, heavy, total. Then the team was moving, shouting, some of them turning to look at her. But it was too late. She had already slung her rifle and was climbing toward the position, boots finding purchase on loose rock, heart hammering but steady. She reached the body, checked the radio. He hadn't had time to speak. Below, the others spread out to clear the area. The lieutenant appeared beside her a few minutes later, breathing hard. "You saw him before anyone else," he said quietly. She nodded. "You saved us." She didn't answer. She just stared at the man's face, at the line of sweat and dust across his brow, at the stillness that came after the sound. Her hand tightened on her rifle. Saved them. Maybe. But this was just the beginning. The ridge stretched farther ahead, and somewhere beyond it, someone else was listening, waiting. She could feel it. And though no one asked her, she already knew she would be the one to find them. Because that was what she did. Because she still had something to make right. Why was the camp so quiet that night? Even the usual generator hum seemed lower, muted, as if the entire outpost was holding its breath. She sat outside her tent, rifle across her lap, cleaning each piece with deliberate care. The moonlight turned the metal silver. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed quick, sharp, then cut short. She knew they were talking about her. The shot on the ridge had made her visible again. For weeks she'd been the ghost no one noticed. Now every look seemed to find her. She worked in silence, wiping carbon from the bolt. The smell of oil was sharp, familiar, comforting. Bootsteps approached. The lieutenant again. "You know you don't have to sit out here alone," he said. She didn't look up. "I'm not alone." He hesitated. "Right, your rifle." She didn't smile. After a moment, he crouched next to her. He looked too young to carry the lines he did in his face. "You were right to take that shot," he said. Her hand stilled. "Was I?" He frowned. "You prevented him from calling reinforcements." "Maybe, or maybe there weren't any." His expression softened. "You second-guess yourself a lot." She slid the bolt back into the rifle, locking it with a click. "Only when I'm awake." The lieutenant didn't reply to that. Instead, he sat there silent, letting the night breathe between them. Finally, he said, "I read your file." Her jaw tightened. "You're not just some sniper. You were," he hesitated, "attached to a special reconnaissance team 2 years ago." She didn't answer. "I read what happened," he said carefully. She set the rifle aside, staring at the ground. "You read the report," she said, "not what happened." His voice was quiet. "Then tell me." Her throat closed. No one had asked her that since it happened. No one had wanted to know. She could still smell the night it all went wrong. Burned cordite, dust, blood thick in the air. "We were moving on a compound," she said slowly. "Intel was solid, too solid." The lieutenant stayed quiet. "They were waiting for us," she said. The words tasted like iron. "They had spotters, machine guns. We walked right into it." She could hear the gunfire again, see the flashes. "They pinned us down. We called for air, but comms were jammed." Her voice went flat. "We lost 3 that night, including my spotter." She didn't tell him about the last thing her spotter had said. Didn't tell him about the way the light had left his eyes as she pressed her hand to the wound. She had taken the shot that killed the man who fired on them. But it hadn't been fast enough. Nothing she did that night had been fast enough. The lieutenant didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "You blame yourself." Her hands clenched. "I was the one who missed the first spotter, the one who should have seen them." He shook his head. You were outnumbered. It wasn't your fault. She stood, slinging the rifle over her shoulder. Doesn't matter, she said, because it felt like it was. The next morning, the team moved deeper along the ridge. This time she walked point, scanning every rock, every shadow. Her scope flicked from one position to another, mind working faster than her feet. She wasn't going to miss anything this time. The others trusted her now, or at least they followed her lead. She could feel their weight behind her, their lives pressing on every choice she made. Halfway up the ridge, she froze. The air had shifted. It was subtle, a change in wind, the faintest scent of smoke. She raised her fist. The column halted instantly. Silence. Then she saw it, a glint of glass just barely catching the morning sun. Scope. Sniper. Her blood went cold. He was high up, positioned perfectly to catch them in the open. She motioned the others down, heart hammering. The lieutenant slid next to her, whispering, "You see him." She nodded. He exhaled, "Take the shot." She adjusted her bipod, body pressed flat against the rock. Her breathing slowed. Everything else fell away, the others, the wind, the fear. It was just her and the target. Her finger tightened. A sudden shout broke the silence. Not from their team, from somewhere else, closer to the ridge. Movement, more figures emerging from cover. An ambush. She swore under her breath, sight swinging between the sniper and the advancing figures. If she took the sniper first, the others might reach them. If she took the others first, the sniper would have a free shot. Her chest ached with the choice. Which one? The lieutenant hissed. Her scope hovered. Time stretched. Then she made the call. The shot cracked. The sniper fell. She swung to the next target, cycling the bolt, firing again. And again. Dust jumped from the rocks. The others opened up, fire ripping through the ridge as they pushed forward. In seconds, the ambush was broken. Silence fell, heavy and ringing. She lowered the rifle, breath shaking. The lieutenant touched her shoulder. You saved us again. But her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Because for a moment, just one, she had almost frozen. Almost lost them. And the memory of that hesitation burned worse than the dust in her lungs. That night she didn't clean her rifle. Didn't sleep. Just sat on the edge of camp, staring at the ridge until dawn. She thought about her old team, about the men she'd lost, and about the look in the lieutenant's eyes when he'd asked, which one? She knew this wouldn't be the last choice like that. And next time the cost might be higher. How many times could a person hold their breath in one day? She wasn't sure anymore. The ridge loomed above them like a silent witness. The team had dug into a shallow position for the night, but no one slept deeply. Every sound made them twitch. Every shadow looked like a rifle barrel. She lay in the dirt, rifle propped on its bipod, cheek resting against the stock. Her eye never left the scope. The stars above were hard and cold, like they were watching too. Somewhere beyond that ridge there was another team, another sniper, maybe more. And she knew, with a weight she couldn't explain, that this wasn't over. The lieutenant crouched next to her just before dawn. You haven't moved all night, he said quietly. She didn't look away from the glass. Neither has he. The lieutenant frowned. You've seen someone. Her finger tapped the stock. I can feel him. He's waiting, watching. He didn't argue. At first light, they pushed forward again. This time they found tracks. Boot prints fresh. Too fresh. The captain called them to a halt, crouching over the prints. We're close, he said. No one needed him to explain how dangerous that was. They spread out, eyes scanning, weapons ready. And then they found the first body. A young man, civilian or had been. No weapon, no gear, just a body lying face down in the dirt. The medic rolled him over, swore under his breath. Shot clean through the chest. Old blood. 2 days at least. The captain's jaw worked. Locals, he muttered. The team went quiet. They all knew what this meant. Whoever was up here wasn't just waiting for them. They were hunting anyone who came too close. The lieutenant glanced at her. She didn't speak, but her throat was tight. Because the boy's face was too familiar. Not the features, but the expression. The same wide-eyed fear she'd seen on her spotter's face, the night everything had gone wrong. She turned away, swallowing hard. They buried the body before moving on. No one said a word. Hours later, they reached a narrow cut in the ridge, a natural choke point. Perfect place for an ambush. She went first, belly low, scanning every ledge, every rock. Halfway through, she spotted movement. Not ahead. Above. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She signaled halt, scope searching the ridge line. And then she saw him. The sniper. Camouflage perfect, rifle laid out. Watching. But not firing. Just watching her. Their eyes met through glass. She froze. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't even reach for his trigger. It was a standoff, but not the kind she was used to. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his rifle. And disappeared. She exhaled hard, heart still hammering. The lieutenant crawled up beside her. "What is it?" She swallowed. "He was there," she said softly. "He had me, and he let me go." The lieutenant's eyes narrowed. "Why?" She shook her head. "Maybe he wants me to follow." The lieutenant studied her. "You want to?" She didn't answer. Because he was right. She wanted to know why he hadn't pulled the trigger. Wanted to know who he was. The team moved through the pass carefully, eyes everywhere. No shots came. No ambush. Just silence. That night she lay awake again, staring at the stars, turning it over in her mind. What kind of sniper spares the enemy? Was it mercy? Or something worse, a trap, a game? Her chest ached with the not knowing. When the lieutenant came to sit beside her, she didn't look up. "You think he'll do it again?" he asked. Her jaw clenched. "I think he's waiting for something." "Like what?" She closed her eyes. "Me." The lieutenant didn't answer, but she felt the weight of his gaze. "You're too close to this," he said quietly. She turned her head, meeting his eyes. "This is what I do," she said. He hesitated. "This isn't just a mission for you, is it?" Her throat worked. "No." The lieutenant's voice softened. "Then what is it?" She looked back at the sky, at the indifferent stars. "It's the second chance I don't deserve." He didn't press her after that. The next day they moved again, this time with heavier caution. The ridge felt alive now, every gust of wind, every scrape of boot like a signal. And then, near midday, they found something that stopped them cold. A small outpost. Abandoned. Smoke still curling from the remains of a fire. And a single piece of paper pinned to a post. She pulled it free. It was a rough sketch, charcoal on scrap. Of her. The lieutenant's breath caught. "He knows who you are." Her hand tightened on the paper. No message. No words. Just the drawing. And a circle drawn around her rifle. The captain cursed, ordering the team to tighten security. But she stood there, staring at the sketch, heart thudding with something between fear and something darker, recognition. Whoever he wasn't just hunting them. He was hunting her. And she couldn't decide if that terrified her. Or if deep down she wanted him to. Why did her hands shake when she folded the paper? She told herself it was the wind, the cold, the fatigue. But deep down she knew better. The sketch wasn't just a threat, it was a message. Someone had been close enough to see her face, close enough to study her rifle, the way she carried it, close enough to know what haunted her. The others didn't say anything as she tucked the paper into her vest. But she could feel their glances. The lieutenant walked beside her as they moved out, his silence heavy. "You're thinking too loud," she said finally. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "We just found a drawing of you in the middle of nowhere. What do you expect me to think?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know what to think either. Every step up the ridge felt like a step back in time. Back to that night 2 years ago. Back to the firelight and smoke and screaming. Back to the man she hadn't been able to save. By the time they reached their next position, the sky was bruising toward dusk. They set up a temporary overwatch. She climbed to the highest rock, laying her rifle across the bipod. Through the scope, she scanned the valley below. And froze. A figure moved across the open ground, just a shadow against the dim light. Tall, rifle slung casually. Not running. Not hiding. Just walking. As if he knew she was there. She locked her crosshairs on his chest. Her finger rested on the trigger. One squeeze and it would be over. But something in the way he walked made her hesitate. This wasn't a soldier moving to attack. This was someone sending a signal. "Talk to me," the lieutenant said in her earpiece. She didn't blink. "He's alone," she whispered, exposed. "Take him." Her breath hitched. She couldn't. Not yet. Not without knowing why. The figure stopped halfway across the valley, turned slowly toward her, and raised a hand. Not in surrender. In greeting. Her heart thudded. Before she could react, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the rocks. She lowered the rifle, breath shaking. The lieutenant's voice crackled in her ear. "Why didn't you shoot?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know how to explain it. That night she sat alone, the sketch clutched in her hand. She turned it over, tracing the circle drawn around her rifle. Her rifle. Not her face. Not her name. Her weapon. What did it mean? She closed her eyes and saw her spotter's face again. Saw the way he had smiled the first time she'd outshot him at range. He'd called her Hawk before anyone else had. "Don't miss," he'd teased that night. And she had. The first shot had gone wide. By the time she corrected, it was too late. She opened her eyes, breathing hard. "Not this time," she whispered. The next morning, she was already in position when the team woke. The lieutenant joined her quietly, setting his canteen down. "You're going after him," he said. It wasn't a question. She kept her eye on the glass. "Yes. You know it could be a trap." She nodded. "That's the point." He studied her for a long moment. "You're not doing this just for us," he said. "No," she admitted. "I'm doing this because I can't live with missing again." The lieutenant sighed, rubbing his face. "Then I guess I'm coming with you." Her head turned sharply. "You don't have to." "Neither do you." They held each other's gaze for a long moment. Then she looked back at the ridge. "Gear up," she said. They left before sunrise, just the two of them. No convoy, no backup. Just boots on rock, rifles slung, and the sound of their own breathing. The ridge was quiet but not dead. Birds stirred in the distance. Wind whispered through the cracks. And somewhere ahead she could feel him. They moved slow, deliberate, scanning every shadow. Hours passed. Then near midday, they found another marker. Not a sketch this time. A spent casing placed upright on a rock. Waiting. Her throat tightened. This was personal now. A challenge. The lieutenant glanced at her. Still think this isn't a game? She knelt, touching the brass. He wants me to come closer. Or he wants you to step into the kill zone. She straightened. Then I'd better be ready when I do. They pressed on, following the trail. Each sign was deliberate, a boot print here, a scrap of cloth there, leading them deeper, until the rocks opened into a narrow canyon. Perfect for a sniper duel. She dropped prone, glassing the cliffs. Nothing. No glint of glass, no shadow, no movement. But she could feel him. Her pulse slowed. She breathed in, out. And then she heard it. A faint metallic click. Safety off. She rolled just as the shot cracked. Rock exploded inches from where her head had been. She dropped behind cover, adrenaline roaring. Contact, the lieutenant shouted, taking position. She didn't answer, just swung her rifle, scanning. The second shot came closer. Too close. He was good. Better than good. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. She found the angle, spotted the muzzle flash, and fired. The round hit rock, showering sparks. He moved fast, controlled. Not panicked. Just adjusting. She fired again. And again. Stone chips filled the air. Then silence. She held her breath. Did you get him? The lieutenant hissed. She kept the scope trained. Slowly, a figure rose from behind cover. Not with his rifle aimed, but with hands lifted, empty. She froze. He stepped into view, deliberate, calm. And this time she saw his face. Not young, not old. Scar across one cheek. Eyes steady. And for a moment she forgot to breathe. Because she knew that face. Not by name. But from the night 2 years ago. He had been there. Watching. And now he was standing here, unarmed, staring straight at her. Why wasn't he reaching for his rifle? Her finger hovered over the trigger, heart thudding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. The man stood there on the ridge, hands open, palms forward. No sudden movements, no words. Just silence. The lieutenant's voice buzzed in her ear. Take him. Her breath caught. She could. One squeeze. But something in his stillness stopped her. This wasn't surrender. This was invitation. Slowly, she eased her finger off the trigger. The lieutenant swore softly. What are you doing? Wait, she murmured. The man tilted his head just slightly, as if acknowledging her choice. Then he pointed not at them, but toward the canyon wall. A warning. Before she could process, she heard it, boots, multiple. Voices shouting, moving fast. More enemy fighters pouring into the canyon. An ambush. Down, she snapped, grabbing the lieutenant and shoving him into cover just as rounds tore into the rock around them. She rolled, returning fire. The other sniper was gone. Vanished into the ridge like smoke. But his warning had saved their lives. The firefight lasted minutes but felt longer. When it was over, the canyon was silent again, bodies cooling in the dust. The lieutenant sat back against the rock, chest heaving. You didn't shoot him, he said. She wiped sweat from her brow. He saved us. The lieutenant gave a harsh laugh. Saved us. He led us into a canyon full of guns. Her jaw clenched. No, she said softly. He led us here because he knew what was coming. The lieutenant shook his head, frustrated. You're too close to this. You can't trust him. She didn't answer. Because deep down, she didn't know if she trusted him either. But she needed to know why he had spared her. Why he was drawing her deeper. That night, she didn't join the team when they regrouped. She stayed on the edge of the camp, staring at the canyon mouth, waiting. And near midnight he came. No rifle. No mask. just a figure stepping out of the dark. Her rifle was up instantly, sights on his chest. He stopped, hands visible. And then finally he spoke. "You're better than you were that night." Her breath froze. "You were there," she said, voice low. He nodded once. "I was." The words hit like a physical blow. "You killed them," she said. "No," he said simply. "I didn't have to. Your own command walked you into it." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "Why didn't you take the shot?" she demanded. His gaze was steady. "Because I saw you stay with him," he said quietly. The canyon seemed to hold its breath. "You stayed with your man even when you could have run," he said. "You tried to save him." Her throat closed. "Don't pretend you know me," she said. "I don't have to," he replied. "I know what it's like to carry ghosts." She blinked, the rifle lowering a fraction. "Why are you here?" she whispered. He hesitated, then said, "Because there's something coming, and you're not ready." Her stomach knotted. "What are you talking about?" He stepped closer. "They're not just after you," he said. "They're after the whole valley, everyone in it." Her mind raced. Intel hadn't said anything about a wider operation. "You expect me to believe you?" she asked. "You already do," he said softly. "Or you would have killed me by now." Her finger twitched against the trigger. She could feel the truth of it in her chest. He wasn't lying. And if what he said was true. The lieutenant appeared behind her, weapon raised. "Step back," he barked. The man didn't move. "Shoot him and we lose our only lead," she said sharply. The lieutenant stared at her. "He's the enemy." "Not tonight," she said. The lieutenant hesitated, lowering his weapon slightly. "This is insane," he muttered. But he didn't fire. The man's gaze stayed on her. "You have until sunrise," he said. "After that, this valley won't be quiet anymore." And then he was gone again, melting into the dark. She stood there for a long time, heart hammering, rifle heavy in her hands. When she finally turned back to the lieutenant, his expression was hard. "You trust him?" She exhaled. "No," she said. "But I can't ignore him." The lieutenant shook his head. "You're risking everything on a man who's tried to kill us twice." She looked back at the empty canyon. "Maybe he's giving me a chance to make sure no one else dies like my team did." The lieutenant's jaw worked. "You'd stake all of us on that chance." Her grip tightened on the rifle. "Yes." Because she couldn't live with missing twice. When dawn broke, she was already packed. The lieutenant fell in beside her, silent but watchful. They had no orders for what came next. No guarantee of backup. Just the faint hope that following the enemy's warning would lead them to something they could stop. And as they started toward the ridge again, she felt the familiar weight of ghosts on her shoulders. But for the first time, they didn't feel as heavy. Because this time, she wasn't just reacting. This time she was choosing. What do you do when the people you trust don't believe you? She stood in the command tent, dust still clinging to her boots, the dawn's pale light bleeding through the canvas. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. "There's an attack coming," she said. Her commanding officer didn't look up from the map. "We have no intel confirming that." Her jaw tightened. "Because you're not listening to the only source who knows." The cove finally looked at her. "You mean the sniper who's been taking shots at our convoys for a month?" "Yes." The word came out sharper than she intended. Silence. Around the table, the other officers exchanged glances. "You expect me to send men out based on what he told you?" the co asked. She took a breath, trying to hold back the anger. "You expect me to ignore it and let them die?" The room was quiet except for the hum of the generator. Finally the co sighed. You have 24 hours, he said. Find proof or drop it. And just like that, she was dismissed. The lieutenant followed her out, helmet tucked under his arm. You know they're not coming with us, he said. I don't need them to, she said, already heading for the gear rack. The lieutenant cursed under his breath. You're going to get us both killed. Then you should stay, she said, loading her rifle. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he grabbed his pack. Hell no, he muttered. If you're going in, you're not going alone. The night came fast. By the time they reached the canyon, the stars were out, cold and sharp. Every sound was too loud, the crunch of boots on gravel, the whisper of their breath under the moonlight. She felt her pulse in her throat. The ridge loomed ahead like a black wall. Somewhere up there, he was waiting. She didn't have to wait long. A flicker of movement, then the shadow stepped forward, quiet as smoke. Follow me, he said. No preamble. No hesitation. They moved single file along a goat path, hugging the cliff face. Every step felt like a decision she couldn't take back. The path opened into a wide shelf overlooking the valley. And that's when she saw it. Rows of trucks. A dozen, maybe more. Fuel tanks, ammunition crates. Men loading supplies, weapons stacked against the rocks. It wasn't a raiding party. It was a staging ground. They'll move before sunrise, the man said quietly. They'll hit every village between here and the border. Her breath caught. Civilians. Families. Why are you telling me this? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he crouched, picking up a stone and tossing it into the darkness. A distant clatter echoed off the canyon walls. When my brother died, he said finally, I swore I'd never fight for someone else's war again. His eyes met hers. But I can't stop them alone. She looked back at the camp below. The trucks, the guns, the men. And she realized he was right. She couldn't stop them either, not with just the two of them and a lieutenant. Her throat was dry. I need proof, she said. He nodded toward the camp. Then take it. Her stomach nodded. She knew what that meant. Getting closer. Risking everything. But if she didn't, command would never believe her. And those villages would burn. The lieutenant shifted beside her. This is suicide, he whispered. She checked her gear. Then make sure we don't die. They moved low, sliding along the rocks until they were within sight of the trucks. Every sound felt magnified, boots on dirt, the click of a rifle strap, the rattle of a loose pebble. She could smell the dazzle, hear the faint scrape of crates being moved. When they reached the edge of the camp, she pulled a small camera from her vest. One by one, she snapped photos, crates marked with weapons caches, fuel lines running to the trucks, men preparing explosives. Each click was a tiny act of defiance. A whisper that said, I see you. When she turned to go, a voice shouted. A light flared. She froze. One of the guards had spotted them. The first shot cracked past her ear, and she dove behind a crate, heart slamming against her ribs. The lieutenant returned fire, shouting for her to move. They ran, feet pounding the dirt, rounds snapping past like angry hornets. The man from the ridge appeared out of nowhere, covering them with precise, controlled shots. They scrambled up the rocks, lungs burning until they were out of range. Only when they reached the shelf again did she let herself stop, collapsing against the stone. Her hands were shaking so hard, she almost dropped the camera. But the photos were there. Proof. Enough to get command's attention. The man stood nearby, rifle slung across his back. They'll move faster now, he said. You've stirred the nest. She nodded, wiping sweat from her face. Then we'll be faster. The lieutenant glanced at her, face pale under the moonlight. You realize what you've just signed us up for, he said. She met his gaze. Yes, she said quietly. Stopping them. And for the first time since her last mission, she felt it, that sense of purpose. Not revenge. Not guilt. Something cleaner. Something that made the ghosts feel quieter. They started back toward base under a sky thick with stars. No one spoke. But in the silence, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. How fast can you convince an entire chain of command that the clock is already ticking? She slammed the camera down on the table, breath ragged, dust streaked across her face. The images glowed under the harsh light. Trucks, fuel, crates of munitions. The room went silent. The Co's jaw tightened. You went in there. Yes. Without authorization. Yes. The pause stretched. You realize you've just violated direct orders. She leaned forward, palms flat on the map. I realize that if we don't move now, those trucks will be gone before sunrise. Her voice was calm but electric, carrying something she hadn't felt in years. Conviction. This is our chance to stop them before they tear through every village in the valley. One of the officers shook his head. Even if we deploy now, we're outnumbered. Then be smarter, she shot back. The room froze. She didn't flinch. Use the terrain. Cut the fuel trucks first. Take away their mobility before you hit them head-on. The Co studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Gear up, we roll in 30. The room exploded into motion. Maps were marked, squads were assigned, radios crackled with orders. She stood there still, letting it sink in. This was happening. And if they failed, it would be on her. Outside, the night air was cold enough to bite. The lieutenant appeared at her side, helmet on, weapon slung. You realize, he said, that if this goes bad, they'll hang it around your neck. She pulled her gloves tight. Then I guess I'd better make sure it goes right. The convoy moved out under cover of darkness. No headlights, just the low hum of engines and the quiet tension that settled over everyone. She sat in the back of the lead vehicle, rifle across her lap, watching the stars blur overhead. Every bump in the road rattled through her chest. She thought of her old team, of the mission that had gone wrong. The screaming, the smoke, the silence afterward. She closed her eyes. Not tonight. Not again. They reached the ridge just before dawn. The valley below was alive with movement, fighters preparing to roll out, engines coughing to life. The lieutenant crouched beside her, scanning through binoculars. They're almost ready to move. Then so are we, she said. Orders crackled over the radio. Teams moved into position along the high ground, setting up firing lanes. Her heart thudded slow and heavy. Waiting. Always the waiting. Then the sound of the first truck starting. The Co's voice came through her earpiece. Green light, take the shot. She exhaled once. Then squeezed the trigger. The round hit the fuel truck dead center. The explosion lit the canyon in a bloom of fire. Chaos erupted below. Men shouted, scrambled for weapons. The trucks swerved, some catching fire, others stuck behind the wreckage. Return fire streaked up toward the ridge, pinging off the rocks. She moved to a new position, firing again, taking out another truck's tires. The squads on the flanks opened up, disciplined, controlled fire cutting through the camp. The lieutenant's voice was in her ear. Keep them bottled, don't let them push through. Her breath came fast, controlled. Every shot was a decision. Every movement a calculation. And then she saw him. The man from the ridge. Not shooting. Directing. Shouting orders to his own men, but not at her. Not at their position. Add the trucks. He was keeping them from regrouping, driving them back toward the choke point. For a moment, their eyes met across the chaos. And in that second, she understood. They were on the same side tonight. A burst of fire snapped past her head, yanking her back to the fight. She dropped flat, returned fire, the smell of burned powder thick in the air. Minutes stretched blurred until the last shot echoed, then faded. The valley was still. The trucks were smoking ruins. The survivors fled into the hills. And she was still breathing. She sat back against the rocks, chest heaving, rifle limp in her hands. The lieutenant dropped beside her, face streaked with dirt and sweat. "You did it," he said. Her throat was dry. "We did it." She looked back at the ridge, searching for the man. But he was gone. No tracks. No shadow. Just silence. The Co's voice came through the radio, crackling. "Good work, we'll sweep the valley, pull back to base." The lieutenant clapped her on the shoulder. "You just saved a lot of lives tonight." She nodded slowly, staring at the smoke rising from the valley floor. But in the back of her mind, she knew it wasn't over. Because someone like him didn't just disappear. And whatever came next, she wasn't sure she was ready. But she would be. Because tonight she hadn't just survived. She had chosen. How do you measure the cost of a night like that? She sat alone on the edge of the ridge, legs dangling over the drop. The sun was rising now, spilling gold across the valley. The smoke had thinned, curling lazily upward like incense. It should have felt like victory. But all she felt was quiet. And the weight in her chest that wasn't gone, just different. Boots crunched behind her. The lieutenant eased down beside her, wincing. "Command wants your report," he said. She didn't look at him. "Give them the pictures," she said. "Give them the kill count." The lieutenant studied her profile. "You don't want the credit." She shook her head slowly. "They wouldn't understand." The wind stirred, cool against her sweat-damp skin. "Do you?" she asked softly. The lieutenant was silent for a long time. Then he nodded. "Yeah," he said. "You were right." She let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "About him. About trusting your gut," he said. "About staying in the fight when everyone else wanted to walk away." She stared at the valley below, her voice almost a whisper. "I stayed once before," she said. "Held my ground, tried to keep him alive." The words caught in her throat, but she forced them out. And it still wasn't enough. The lieutenant didn't speak. He didn't have to. For a moment, the silence was unbearable. Then she heard it. A stone shifting. She turned. He was there. Standing just beyond the rise, rifle slung, watching her. The man from the ridge. Her breath caught, but she didn't reach for her weapon. They just stared at each other across the space between them. Finally, he raised one hand, not in salute, not in threat. Just a gesture. Recognition. Then he turned and walked into the rising sun. No words. No promises. Just gone. The lieutenant exhaled sharply. "Are we gonna go after him?" She shook her head. "No," she said. Her gaze stayed on the horizon, where his silhouette had disappeared. Some ghosts aren't meant to be chased. The lieutenant was quiet, letting the words settle. After a long moment, he stood. "You coming back to base?" She stayed where she was. "In a minute." When he was gone, she let herself breathe, really breathe, for the first time in years. The valley stretched before her, scarred but still standing. She thought about the people in the villages who would wake this morning to another sunrise, who would never know her name. Maybe that was enough. Her hand drifted over the rifle in her lap, fingers tracing the worn grip. It wasn't lighter, but it felt like something she could carry now, because she had chosen this weight, and she would keep choosing it. Not for medals, not for redemption, but for the quiet that came after the last shot. The quiet that said, "Not today. Not this time." She stood, the sun warming her face, and slung the rifle over her shoulder. Behind her the camp was stirring, engines starting, voices calling. But she didn't turn back yet. She let herself stand there a little longer, letting the wind take the last of the smoke. When she finally walked away, the ridge was empty. And somehow that felt right. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And then it disappears, leaving only the silence behind.